All right. So I just want to wrap up this series that I've been putting together. It's a different title, same subject. I was listening to a video yesterday by some guy, and he was talking about Tariq Nasheed and foundational black Americans. This guy is from South America somewhere. It's a black dude from South America somewhere. And he said, he mentioned that Tariq is claiming that black Americans are actually Native Americans. Sort of like we're trying to usurp Native American history or claim that we're actually the Indians. Because a lot of people, a lot of black people, they just can't believe, it's hard for them to believe that blacks were the original people of America. And I get it. I understand. And I just want to point out that really it's deeper than that. Black Americans are really just Americans, to be honest with you. Because you don't say that there are black Africans. You don't say black Nigerians. And really you don't say black Malaysians. You just point the people out. The North Sentinelese people, you don't say black North Sentinelese or the black Jarara people. Just say North Sentinel people and Jarara people. It's the same everywhere. But here in the United States, here in America, we have to distinguish ourselves. So FBA is fitting. You know, I'm not against that. I'm just pointing out that it's so deep. It's so deep that we technically should just be called Americans, just like other people of other. Because if you say Black American or African American, that suggests that there's some other type of natural American. And there is not. Just like it would be silly to say the Black Ethiopians, the Black Sudanese. You know, we don't do that. You would only say the white Nigerians. Right? That's a way of pointing out that they're not native to that land. Saying black Americans, in a way, sort of suggests that we're not native to this land. And really, black people were here by themselves. You know, a lot of people basically still see it as a big deal. It's like something that's unbelievable, and it's not. It should be generally accepted. But black people were over here in the Americas by themselves for a long time. At least that's what I believe. That is what the evidence looks like to me. I don't know. Look, I can't travel back in time. All historians, all they can do is make the best possible assessment based on the evidence that they have. Based on the evidence from this seat, black people were over here in the Americas for a very long time, man. Very long time, like forever. Tens of thousands of years. Over here, and there were no other types of people here. The thing is, the history schools, history classes, the textbooks, and in the mainstream educational system does not teach the students how old humanity actually is. Because, you know, it would reveal a lot of things that really contradict the Bible. And they're really still bending over backwards to protect the Bible, which came out in what, 1455 for the first time. So it's pretty deep to me. Now, we had Alexander von Wootna. I talked about him in one of the video series. He's the guy, I think a German guy, said, quote, "The startling fact is that in all parts of Mexico, archaeological pieces representing Negro or Negroid people have been found, especially in archaic or pre-classic sites." Okay, Alexander von Wootna. I think I provided how you actually spell his name. It's actually written right here, von Wootna. If you try to spell his name, you'll get close enough. You'll see it in the recommendations. Now, he went as far back as 1500 BC, and I'm saying that in 1500 BC, black people had already been over here for tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years. What's sort of hard for people to understand, for some people, a lot of people accept it, is that black people are extremely old. Been on this planet for a extremely long time. So long that black people have entire cities and civilizations in ruins. Ruins, sunken under the oceans and all of that. Now, let's start off up top with this article that was published in 1999 in the Japan Times. Okay? Japan Times, rediscovered in Brazilian museum. Skull alters theory on colonization of Americas. Rio de Janeiro, anthropologists unveiled the oldest known human fossil from the Americas on Monday. A woman's skull with African features that could revolutionize theories about the continent's early inhabitants. Again, this was published by the Japan Times in 1999. The fossil, first discovered in Brazil in 1975, but only recently found to come from a woman who lived 11,500 years ago. Okay? Shows there were human beings on the continent here in America before Asian immigration. In other words, before the Indians that we know of as Indians. Long before they immigrated over here, black people were here for tens of thousands of years. If you go back in time, it says 11,500 years ago. If we could hop in a time machine and go back 11,500 years ago, people, even at that point in time, blacks had already been over here tens of thousands of years. I'm talking 50,000 years or more and beyond. Okay, again, 50. I'm talking 30, 40, 50,000 years. Okay, and shows there were human beings on the continent long before Asian immigration, said anthropologist Ricardo Ventura Santos. Okay, you can Google this man. As a matter of fact, let's Google him now. Let's Google him now. I want to pull up his face. Ricardo Ventura Santos. And I'm doing this just to show. Wait a minute here. I want to do this just to show that it's not just black people. I mean, you have to do this with a lot of people. They're just not convinced. They're just not convinced. You have to show them, hey, who else said what? Matter of fact, let me get another picture of this individual. He is the one who said that. got here? This is Ricardo Ventura. What I say? Santos. Okay. He said long before Asian immigration, there was black people in the Americas 11,500 years ago. Okay, so these are not wild, crazy theories or anything like that. And like I said, it shouldn't be surprising. There's nothing surprising about it. It's not a big deal. And that's how I want people to look at it. It's no big deal. Okay, there were people in all parts of the world, black people in all parts of the world, all over the world, tens of thousands of years ago. It's not something out of the ordinary, people. You look at all these other continents, like we went over before. They teach you right here. First wave of out of Africa migrants, perhaps some 60,000 years ago. Going to New Guinea, Australia, and other parts of Asia, other parts of the world, period. They were all over the world. We talked about the Australians. They said they showed up some 50 to 70,000 years ago. You talk about the Philippines. People, these are islands. These are all islands I'm talking about. If they sailed that long ago, then there was just entire world civilizations that are just lost in time now. Lost in time. Where civilization would rise and fall over periods of tens of thousands of years. Because look, in order for them to do all that traveling, people, they had to been sailing on big time major ships. Again, you're not rowing across these bodies of water in no little canoe. Now they did the Ra expedition. You can Google that as well, where they sailed a boat, an Egyptian boat, ancient Egyptian boat, from Africa to the Americas. It was possible, very much possible. Let me tell you what I believe. I believe this this is my theory. Based on the evidence, I'm not just making crazy statements here. The original Americans who first came over here were black people from Egypt. Okay? Let me say that again. I believe the first Americans, us, we originally came here from Egypt. We were a colony from Egypt. Just like I believe people from Egypt during Egypt's heyday, when it was a powerful empire, they went all over the world. That is confirmed by Herodotus and many other historians, that the Egyptians in their heyday sailed all over the world. Egypt, tens of thousands of years ago, was like a global empire, sort of like what the United States is today, but on a higher level, on a much higher level. Now, how could this be? Now, I don't just want to make crazy statements. And in Africa, in Egypt, let me see if I can pull up a few images for you here. Where are they? Right here. During the Middle Ages, when they went into Egypt, that Sphinx was covered in sand. Do y'all know how long it takes for that to happen? Just think about that. This thing is actually in a huge enclosure. This thing was buried in sand up to its neck. Can you imagine how long that takes? I talked about Shock, that anthropologist or geologist, whatever he is, where he pointed out the rain erosion around the enclosure. People, this is a lot older than what history books tell us. A lot older. Talking eons ago, man. Eons ago. And they had to be a super, super powerful civilization to build something like this. Now, what you want to pay attention to is that in Egypt, Egypt did not pop up out of nowhere. Okay? I point this out whenever I try to prove that the Egyptians were black. Let me see. Okay? When you look at Egypt, it is not a civilization that popped up out of nowhere. When you have high development like that, it always has a trail. You're always going to be able to find the beginning stages of civilization like that. And that in Africa is in Nubia, where you have hundreds of small, much smaller pyramids. Hundreds of them all throughout Nubia, which is accepted as a black civilization. Well, the Egyptians were nothing but Nubians who migrated up to Egypt. But understand, in the Americas, there is no trace of development like that. You follow what I'm saying? When you go down to Mexico, you see those pyramids, they don't show early stages of development. Because the early stages, the growth took place in Africa. And by the time we migrated here, they already had the sciences. They had the science down packed already. Another historian also pointed this out, who believes that the original Americans came from Egypt. They were an Egyptian colony. Herodotus talks about Egyptian colonies being in other parts of the world other than Egypt. Okay? Civilizations like this don't just pop up out of nowhere. You're not just going to have, boom, this high development. You're going to be able to trace its development, its growth. You see that in Africa. You don't see it in the Americas. With the Olmec civilization, you can tell that they came here with the knowledge, with the science. They came here with it. And you notice it's only in these civilizations do you find megalithic statues. Just like you see in Egypt. Giant, huge statues. Only difference is the Olmecs didn't have their faces with their lips and noses knocked off like you have with some 80% of statues in Egypt. You know how long it would take a people to develop the science to build stuff like this? That would take a very long time. You find the growth and development in Africa. You don't find it. You don't find it here in the Americas. That is because they came here with that knowledge. When you look at the pyramid complexes down there in South America, like in Egypt, they are aligned with the stars, with the Orion's belt. You're not going to tell me that in two totally different parts of the world where the people have had no contact with each other, they're just going to happen to both build pyramids and align them, huge, massive pyramids, and align them with Orion's belt. That's strong evidence that the first Americans were Egyptian colonies. I think it was Bobby Hemmett. He pointed this out too, how Black Americans seem to have this super strong spiritual and mental connection with ancient Egypt. It is my theory that that is because we came from there. We came from there, and that was eons ago. Just like Egyptian colonies went to other parts of the world, not just the Americas. They went to India, they went to Indonesia, and they did the same things. And like the Americas, you don't find the developing stages in Indonesia, India. Okay, these were Egyptian colonies, in my opinion. I mean, and that's, you know, that would be, what a coincidence that would be. Hey, we've never seen each other, never met, but we just happened to both build massive pyramids and align them with Orion's belt. People, I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not buying that. Now, like I said, Alexander von Wuchnow presented a bunch of artifacts to help support his belief that the first Americans were an African peoples. And it's so similar to Egypt that it's ridiculous. Matter of fact, when they first encountered, you know, the pyramids and the carvings and everything, the temples down there in South America, they wrote a book, and it was titled Egypt in America. It was so similar. They just said, man, this is like Egypt right here in America. And the similarities are crazy. I think it's hard to deny that the first Americans, us, came from Egypt. One thing I like to point out is one of the oldest Egyptian deities, Bes, B-E-S. Strong connection here. One of the oldest. This is a Twa. The earliest people to migrate across the world were the Twa. And listen, the Twa, these small people, they went all over the planet. And there are stories all over the planet, even in Ireland, of these small black people. You find them in South America. But what I want to point out is how Bes' face is on the so-called Mayan calendar. This is an old Nile Valley deity. With its tongue out, has a skull necklace and all that. You know best when you see him. An Egyptian deity smack dead in the middle of the Olmec calendar. Okay? Now, after you get so many similarities, you have to start questioning. You know, once you find so many similarities, you can't say that this is coincidence. And you find a lot of similarities. That level of technology that they practice over there in Egypt, people, that takes schools, man. You gotta go through all types of, can you imagine the training? It's just like today. You have people that have to go through years and years, decades of education to be skilled craftsmen like this, to construct. And you know about the science behind like the Great Pyramid. Man, that probably took millions of years of development to reach that point. No, 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 no. Ain't no just popping up all over in different parts of the planet. People just building the exact same things with this high, super high technology. No, that knowledge came from Egypt to other parts of the world. And it's not a big deal. Look at how when they found the Sphinx. I mean, look at this thing. You're talking tens of thousands of years old. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. Man, can you imagine how long ago they had to have came over here? Man, that was eons ago. Like I said, they tell you or teach us about how long the Sentinelese have been over there. 55,000 years. So look, it's no big deal that we were over here the same amount of time and arrived here around the same time that other people arrived in other parts of the world. All over the world, these people first entered those areas tens of thousands of years ago. Okay, I think it's hard to deny. Okay, you have Van Woutenau, and he presented a lot of sculptures and artifacts and to support his belief that the first Americans were blacks. And like I said in the other video, these artifacts that were found in America would fit right in any part of Africa if you asked to see their artifacts. Okay? Fit right in. It's pretty undeniable, in my opinion. And, I mean, look. George Washington came over here with what? Black people. Said that the Moors actually gave them the maps. And came over here with them. Christopher Columbus as well. Here, let me show y'all something here. Let me share something else with you all. Let me share my screen here. Okay. You can Google this. Actually, I left a link to this in the description box. PDF, 10 pieces of evidence to prove black people sailed to the Americas long before Columbus. American narcotics discovered in Egyptian mummies. Again, American narcotics discovered in Egyptian mummies. All right, I want y'all to check this out. Egyptian artifacts in North America, on top of the many other artifacts been found in America. Talked about the pyramids, skeletons. There have been many instances of archaeologists discovering skulls and skeletons that they believed clearly belonged to the people of African descent. Polish professor. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. Can y'all even see that? Let me try to increase the size here. Right? Not going to try to pronounce that name. It is all over the place right here. Polish professor revealed the discovery of African skulls at Olmec sites somewhere down there. Predate Columbus. People, this took place, this migration to America took place eons ago. Eons ago. The similarities are crazy. We'll get into those. The accounts of other European explorers, Christopher Columbus was said to have noted to have found African peoples over here. Vasco Nunez, y'all know about Nunez, Balboa, made record of seeing Negroes when they reached the New World, just like they saw Negroes when they went to all other parts of the world. It's really no big deal. This should be in the textbooks in the public education system. 100%. Of course, they built ships. Of course, look, it's pretty undeniable from this sea. Let me go back to my PowerPoint so I can point out a few more things here. Now, these similarities between Egypt and the Americas is pretty ridiculous. Here you see some similarities in their sculpture. This is Olmec here on the left, and postures is strong evidence. Postures of their figures, their art figures, their statues. It shows that the same ritual, technology, culture was present. That is because we came here from Egypt eons ago. That's why we had the technology and know-how to build the exact same megalithic architecture that you can only find in Egypt. Now you find it in India, Indonesia as well, but those were the Kushite, Negrito civilizations as well. Right? Might deal with that in a different live stream. These artifacts are from the Americas. When people talk about the Olmecs, when black people talk about the Olmecs, for whatever reason, they think of the Olmecs as a different type of people from themselves. No, Negro, that's you. These peoples was you over here. And they eventually, over time, migrated up north, most likely in response to invasions of other peoples. That's why they also found them. And look, like I said, man, I know the phenotype of black people. Like I said, I've been into art my whole life. I used to sit in class and draw people, just look at them and draw them. And another thing I want to point out is with the Olmec heads, a lot of other races of people have come out and said those are not the faces of Negroes. Those are faces of, Mexicans or Indians or whatever. Okay, look, knock yourself out. If you believe that, knock yourself out. But, it's up to you to try to convince others, try to prove your point. And I'm comfortable with it. You look at, here's some more similarities. This is from the Americas. Virtually the same headdress you see in Egypt. It's virtually the same headdress. Even got the thing here on the forehead, middle of the forehead. I mean, is it just coincidence on top of the pyramids being over here, top of the pyramids being aligned with the Orion's belt, on top of the high technology over here, on top of there not being a developing stage in the Americas like what you see in Africa? Okay, and the technology that would have been required, it's not just technology, it's culture. It's culture. What you see in America was just a different version of the culture. They move away from Egypt. They have the same culture and stuff like that, but there'll be differences. Sometimes even deities will have differences because you're in a different part of the world. When you talk about Egypt, you're really talking about deities specific to that area. They have deities that's connected with the Nile River itself. You go to other parts of the world, you're going to have different deities and stuff like that, but they'll have the same basic traits and strengths and powers. The deities associated with the Nile there will be associated with a different river or source of life in a different part of the world. That's why it's not identical to Egypt, but you see these strong, very strong, powerful similarities. Here's another example, right? These are eyes. This is a mouth here. This is in the Americas. This is in Egypt. I mean, look, here is another example. You see the posture, the similarities in these figures. One in the Americas, the other in Egypt. And one thing I want to point out is that a lot of times the mainstream media, they don't want to show you photos of the Olmec heads with their helmets off. And that is because the Olmec sculptures that are not wearing the helmets got flipping afros. The Olmec statues themselves, when the helmet is not on, these things have afros. Again, when you think of the Olmecs, you have to stop thinking of these people as some other people other than yourself. This is your history. I mean, this statue here looked like James Brown or James Toney the boxer. What are we talking about? And this is clearly an afro, man. Do y'all not know afros when you see them? Do you not know an afro when you see one? Black people. I mean, do you not know your own faces or your own family when you see them? Look at the shape and faces of these things, man. These are the types of facial features that they used back during the era of scientific racism, where they tried to prove that blacks have the same skulls as monkeys. I'm not buying it. Now look, the Indians, the Mexicans, the South Americans who are not black, you want to argue that these are not black people, look, I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. All I'm saying is show your evidence. Show your evidence. That's on you. But you have several of these Olmec heads, man. They're sitting up there with the helmet off with afros. Afros, afros. And like I said, there's so many similarities. Here's another one where this a posture, again, postures. You see the similarities all over Africa with African artifacts, just like you see here in America. Because Egyptians migrated from Egypt to other parts of the world too. You got to remember, humans in general originated along the Nile. So they populated really the entire earth. Right? You got the posture similarities there. And another thing, if the Olmecs were not black, some people try to argue that these were not black people, just like they try to argue that the Egyptians were not black people. If they were not black, my question is, if you truly believe that the Olmecs were mestizo or whatever type of different race or Asian, then why do so many non-black people who are not black who write books, why do so many of them exclude the Olmecs in their books? Why do so many of them exclude the Olmecs? They will say Aztecs, Mayans, Inca. Whenever they want to talk about the ancient history of the Americas, they say Aztec, Inca, Mayans. And this is replete, book after book, publication after publication. Aztec, Inca, Maya. Aztec, Maya. Even though the Olmecs had the greatest accomplishments, building those pyramids, the megalithic stone structures had. If you really felt like that was your history, you'd celebrate the Olmecs. They were the first ones over here. Even mainstream academia admits that the Olmecs were first. But yet, book after book after book, these people down there in South America who are not black, when they want to talk about the history of America, they exclude, they leave the Olmecs out. I believe that is evidence that they don't truly believe that they were the Olmecs. They don't truly believe that they are the descendants of the Olmecs. Okay? Over and over, you see the same thing over and over, book after book. They only want to talk about the Aztec, Inca, and Maya. Why? Because those were the subset civilizations. Just like you saw in Egypt, the Egyptians were very generous. They helped teach the Greeks by the admission of the Greeks themselves. Herodotus, all of the Greek history, they all say that. Go to any college right now. Talk to the history professor or philosophy or whatever. Ask them if the ancient Greeks borrowed from the Egyptians. They're going to tell you, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. Just like the Egyptians shared knowledge with surrounding civilizations, the Olmecs shared with these newly arriving people. Newly arriving people. And like I said over and over, they leave out the Olmecs. I believe they leave them out. They exclude the Olmecs because they know Olmecs were Negroes. They were Negroes, and unlike, like I said, in Egypt, there was no army who came through wave after wave, knocking Olmec heads, knocking their nose off, knocking their lips off. That you didn't have the massive scale of cover-up and whitewashing of Olmec civilization like you had with Egypt. So they found most of these heads, if not all of them, facing towards the sky. When they discovered these heads, they would be facing towards the sky, not sitting upright like what you see here. So can you imagine how long ago this civilization had to have been built? Imagining the times when these civilizations were thriving in their heyday. I mean, you look at the age of these things, look eons old, man. They've been weathering and all this kind of stuff. They're all weathered. Stop it. So look, black people, this is no disrespect to Africa. Like I said, I believe we came from Africa. But we are genuinely Americans. Just like other people are what they are. And I'm saying that to put emphasis on how long black people were here in America by themselves. And how long ago it had to have been. These things look incredibly old to me. Incredibly old. And when you're talking about other people in other parts of the world, you're talking about what? 55, 60,000, 75,000 years ago. And these are just guesstimates. Could have been a lot further in the past than that. So back then, it was a whole different world. I don't know what happened. I don't have no theory on that. But there looked like there was, at some point in prehistoric times, there was like global catastrophe, global chaos. Something happened that knocked civilization back, almost back into the Stone Age. Technology was lost. All kinds of stuff was lost. Knowledge and technology was lost over time. But just like these people are the true natives of their lands, of the Philippines, they know, and the Filipinos who are not black over there, they call the Ada people Negritos. They call them Negroes. Just like these people are really the true Filipinos. These people are the true Australians. Black people, you are the true Americans. One of the world's best kept secrets. That is my opinion based on the facts, based on the evidence. So big shout out to everybody who joined me for this live stream, and I will see you all on the next.